Harper Audio presents Why Bob Dylan Matters by Richard F. Thomas, read by Nick Landrum. Chapter 1. Why Does Dylan Matter to Us? There's a moment when all old things become new again. Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's Blonde on Blonde was one of two albums I packed in the trunk I sent from New Zealand to Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the early summer of 1974. The other was Songs of Leonard Cohen. I was 23 years old, and had sold off the rest of my record collection to finance a 2-month backpacking trip through Greece, before starting my doctoral studies at the University of Michigan. The trip to Greece was my first, but I had been fascinated by the Greeks and Romans since the age of 9, growing up in Auckland, New Zealand, half a world away from where their civilizations rose and fell. I arrived in Ann Arbor on August 18, 1974, days after Richard Nixon resigned from the presidency, ready to begin my professional life as a scholar and teacher of classical literature. My trunk finally arrived in October, and its familiar contents were a welcome sight. Along with the survivors of my record collection, that trunk contained the few classical texts I had accumulated as an undergraduate. The writings of Homer and Virgil, the epic poets of Greece and Rome, along with Sappho, Catullus, Horace, and Ovid, the brilliant lyric poets and love poets whose work captures what it means to live and love, to win and lose, to grieve and celebrate, and to grow old and die. For 2,000 years, their poetry has fired the minds and imaginations of philosophers and poets, painters, sculptors, and musicians, dreamers and lovers. For the past 40 years, as a classics professor, I've been living in the worlds of the Greek and Roman poets, reading them, writing about them, and teaching them to students in their original languages and in English translation. I have for even longer been living in the world of Bob Dylan's songs. And in my mind, Dylan long ago joined the company of those ancient poets. He is part of that classical stream whose spring starts out in Greece and Rome and flows on down through the years, remaining relevant today, and incapable of being contained by time or place. That's how Dylan matters to me, and that's what this book is about. From the beginning of his musical career, Bob Dylan has been working with artistic principles and attitudes toward composition, revision, and performance that bear many similarities to those of the ancients. He has also been living and writing in a world that bears many striking similarities to that of the ancient Romans, whose republic was the model on which the founding fathers built our own system. I believe that Dylan early on came to recognize this similarity, and it has been reflected in the worlds he creates for us in his music ever since. Cullen Murphy's 2007 book, Are We Rome?, addresses this question, arguing that our time, Dylan's time, looks quite a bit like, for the most part, that of the Romans at various moments in their more than 1,000-year history. According to Cullen, the ties that bind the two cultures include the condition of being a superpower, tensions caused by ethnic differences, the persistent memory of civil wars long after the last battle was fought, a sense of the fragility of political structures and decline of the human condition, the relaxation of moral and religious bonds, and a pushback against the countercultures. At the heart of it, Rome around the last century BC and the beginnings of the 1st century AD, and America in the second half of the 20th, share a sense of modernity, by which I mean a few things. By then, Rome had more or less established herself as the dominant power in the Mediterranean world. The absence of serious external enemies, along with the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?